All right, hello, welcome back to the Music City Drive-In. I'm Eric, and I get to speak today with Adrian Bonvento. I am terribly sorry if I get any pronunciation wrong. How are you today?
Good, good. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Tell us about the movie. What is your experience making this?
Yeah. Well, my experience making it was interesting because I guess it falls into two categories. Sort of my vision for it and what I wanted to achieve as a filmmaker, which was never necessarily about statistics or results or A to B to C, which I'll come back to in a second. And then obviously the other component to it is obviously since you are following a racing team, you do sort of have to tell that story in a way of what happened, what progressed over the course of the season. So it was an interesting process. And then I kind of threw into the mix there my kind of personal style and touch on filmmaking and editing to create what I think is a very different kind of sports documentary.
I so you managed to put a structure on this thing that I usually only see in like blockbuster structured Hollywood movies by sitting in the middle of one of the most tense experiences I can imagine with sound design that was killing me in the best way and like pull away at a very good time for a title card. And I don't remember the exact wording for this, but it's, that's quote unquote act three. And then we're going to watch how we build up to that.
Right, right.
I want to hear about the editing room, how you decided to put and structure this documentary together. Like, yeah, tell us about your style.
So the editing room was interesting because you always have your vision as a filmmaker, and then you see what you capture as a documentary filmmaker because you have one take really on most of these things. You can't reorganize, rearrange, and then when you edit, I tend
race again.
Sorry.
Yeah, just have that race again.
Yeah. Right. Just do that really cool thing you did again. Yeah. But as an editor, and I know everybody edits slightly differently, I tend to just kind of throw things in the timeline to start and see what works. I throw in some visuals, I throw in some audio, I do try different things, and just kind of get like a rough sense of how it's going to feel. And then I think about the story as a whole, what I'm trying to tell. And, it's been so long at this point. I've been editing this thing well, obviously we're finished now, but it was like over a year's worth of like actually editing it. Not every day 9 to 5, but with a few breaks in between for my own mental sanity.
Mm-hmm.
That scene I felt was a really strong way to open it. I kind of wanted to start with a bang, right? I wanted it to feel more like cinema than a documentary, which is part of the reason why I don't have a single talking head interview in the entire thing. But yeah, that race sequence I was actually going to be longer to start, to be honest. And I said, we can't give away too much. We want to kind of cut it down, keep it to the best. And then we really hit it hard at the end again.
And sound design as well. I feel like you use so much of the natural sounds that I feel like it helps empathize with the people stuck in the pit crew or in the car. Like to the point that I feel like if the wrong person watches this at the wrong time and just hears the whirring noises from in a car, like they might get agitated. But like it works so well for the situation. Like as opposed to putting music like to underscore it and whatnot. Like what these choices.
Yeah. First of all, I gotta say, I gotta thank here it is, the star of the film, right? The car. This car, honestly, you never know what you get necessarily with teams that race different cars, but I was very fortunate that this car looks and sounds amazing. So first off, you have the car. Sound, as you know, is incredibly important, sometimes even more so than visuals in a film. So I was so happy that I had a car that wasn't turbocharged and didn't sound like just kind of a bunch of sounds kind of muted together, which a lot of cars these days do. The Camaro is very interesting because not only do you have that deep, throaty American muscle V8 that shakes the earth from the outside, on the inside, you actually have a straight cut gearbox. So you have this ear-splitting, high-pitched whine that when they combine sounds like a Michael Bay movie. It's just like explosions and machine sounds. And yeah, it sounds so cool in there. And so, I could listen to that forever. But it's very unique. Not many cars are like that. Most cars are either one or the other or none of the above. So I was lucky that I had a good car to work with to begin with. But in terms of the stylistic choices of using that natural audio, I kind of wanted to put people in the racing seat. I've been fortunate enough in my days as a filmmaker around racetracks to be in the passenger seats of real race cars with real race car drivers going at race speeds, right?
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to convey how that feels to your average person as much as you can in film without being there in the seat yourself. And sound is such a key component to that. So the camera placement, the camera settings, the camera angles, coupled with the sound and the editing, I wanted to create an immersive experience and not just rely on music. Because sometimes, I mean, there is music throughout, but it's more subtle in the background, right? There's only maybe
Right.
4 actual noticeable music tracks that play in the film. And sometimes I feel that music can overpower the visuals, and you never want to have people humming the tune of the song. You want everything to work in conjunction with the other things involved.
How was it working with the crew, trying to bring your own film crew? Because you deliver how things need to work on a precision point, and how what a machine this operation is of doing racing like this. And here you have sound equipment and checking with the guy who's like, hang on a second, I got to make sure this camera is here. And like, how did that work together?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm not sure if you know, but I did everything myself. I didn't have a crew.
Oh,
I genuinely, I was the guy rigging the cameras in the car. I was checking all the levels. I was checking the framing. I was making sure everything was running, not, overheating in this car, because it gets well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit when they race in there. And then I was running to my position I needed to be in with my running gun setup, while also making sure that the team radio was recording to a device on me that I was also listening to, so I could determine where to be at the right time and events to the race.
Okay, then I have an immediate follow-up question. Are you okay?
I am now. Yeah. I am now. I bit off, to be honest, I bit off a bit more than I could chew at the start of this, and I realized that well into the edit. However, that's kind of my style. I have an idea for something and I want to do it, and I go do it. And very often I'll be like, wow, that was a bit too much. But then, I bear down and work through it and get it done. So it kind of was the only way to do it for me, because I had a vision for it, and I didn't really know anybody else that I would trust to achieve the things I wanted to achieve, or necessarily see it the way I saw it. And also budgetary constraints and things like that. And just pure passion. I mean, it was a passion project, first and foremost.
Okay. So I got a 2-part question.
Yes.
What are some things about this format of racing that you think people maybe need to know, maybe Google what it is about, that might help them understand what's happening on screen better?
Okay. This format of racing, let's see. So sports car racing, it's interesting. I think number one, there's a few things. Number one, it's cool because the cars they race are cars you can actually go out and buy, especially this Camaro. It's very closely related to their ZL1 1LE street car, which is, street car loosely. It's really a track car that you can drive on the street. So that's cool. So it's relatable to cars you see every day. In terms of the series itself and the more technical aspects of it, I think it's interesting that they drive on road courses and not just like a NASCAR oval. So you travel around to all these different parts of the country and the world, depending on the series, and you get to see these beautiful locations, beautiful racetracks. In terms of the competition itself, that's like a whole question for another interview. I think that I wanted to sort of convey or tell people that this sport is more than just showing up, getting in a car, and hitting the gas and the brake pedal. There's every time you roll off the transporter to start a weekend, the people have to set up their entire base of operations. You have to fine tune the car to the track itself. You have to fine tune the car to the weather conditions, to your competitors. You're working within the regulations of what the series does, balance of performance wise, because they can add weight to your car or change things about it. Then when it comes to time the race itself, there's race strategy. When do you do your pit stops? Which tires are you on? If it's raining, are you going to change to rain tires, or do you take the risk of staying on slicks? When do you do your driver changes? Yellow flags coming into play. So that obviously is a bit more than most of your average person will understand or care to understand. But what I wanted to convey, and what I guess would tell your person who's either not familiar with motor racing or has a general knowledge of sport, is like, this sport is incredibly complex, incredibly compelling, incredibly cutthroat and competitive. And the link, I think, is that it's cool that these people are competing in cars you see every day on the street.
And that is the answer to my second question, which is, what are you hoping audiences will walk away from this movie?
Right.
What experience are you hoping they'll walk away with?
Yeah. Well, that is interesting, because I always like to sort of let the audiences take from it what they will. Obviously, I go into it as a filmmaker with a vision and sort of with my own agenda of what I'm trying to convey and what I'm trying to show. So that being said, I'm always happy to hear anybody's response to it. And a lot of times people take away stuff that I didn't necessarily think of, which I can come back to in a second with specific examples. But as a filmmaker, I think that number one, I wanted to convey just the pure raw intensity of these machines and everything that it takes to pilot one, to work on one mechanically, to get the strategy correct, but more so than not, like the intense in-car action. I wanted that there because you don't get to see that really. You don't, broadcast doesn't really follow it. The camera quality isn't there. The audio quality isn't there. They don't have multiple angles. They're not editing it.
And even professional productions, you have like as recently as like Ford versus Ferrari, back to like Rush with Chris Hemsworth, all the way back to Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise. You got like people kind of looking at it like there's a team there, but not really understanding it as a team sport on the level of something else like this. So.
Right. And also even the simplest stuff, like, when you talk about the films like Ford versus Ferrari and a lot of these Hollywood racing films, and nobody will understand this except people who actually race, but you have these scenes where they're just like going flat out chasing someone, and then they cut to the gas pedal, and it's like, I'm just going to hit the gas pedal harder, and I'm going to shift and go faster. I'm like, you're already going at the maximum. You can't just hit it harder and pass a guy, like, so I wanted it to be real racing, right? Like, because guys will follow each other, like millimeters from the bumper, lap after lap after lap after lap. And it may take you 20 laps to pass a guy because you don't have the right angle or he's faster on the straight. So like real racing is slower and more methodical than Hollywood would have you believe. And I wanted to convey that. That's part one, right? And going back to the original question, part B is I wanted to, in the voiceover and the way I edited it, sort of, approach these questions that don't usually get answered in films like this. My question going into this film was, why do you race? And, why do you do this? And how does that feel? And it seems like a simple question, but it's really not. We're not talking about, just the surface level answer. We're talking about asking yourself why 5 times to get to the core building block of why you actually do this, So that was a big thing I wanted to introduce in the film and convey the fact that, that intellectual complexity, trying to understand why you do something, what drives you to do it. And at the beginning of this film, the people I interviewed didn't even know the answer to it. We had to actually work towards that. So those were the two things. I think A, the raw, like in-car awesomeness, and then B, the more intellectual side of it and the introspective side of it, trying to figure out what really makes these people tick. You know what I mean?
Awesome. So what are some things that people have pointed out to you that you feel like you didn't notice about the movie?
Well, a few things. My wife actually told me when there was a scene where Robin's basically like chewing out the team, right? They've had a series of missteps and they make another one, and he is just like basically tearing them a new one behind the scenes, which was great that I was able to capture that, and everybody was fine with that. But my wife was like, I used to work in restaurants back in the day, and like I can completely relate to that feeling of us messing up and my manager just being like, you guys need to get your act together, otherwise heads are gonna roll. And I was like, oh, I didn't really think of that. I was just like, I know, they're in dire straits, but I like, for her to connect on that level was just interesting to me, and not something I would have thought of by putting that scene in there.
Can you talk a little bit more to you mentioned something that every once in a while I hear from filmmakers, audio is almost more important than the visuals. Can you talk a little bit more to that, like what you were aiming for, what you listened for, and what you hope to get in the editing room in audio?
I think, obviously the car needs to be, when it's the car sequences, the car just shines, right? It can't, I try and make it so it's not too quiet and not too loud that it's annoying and like oppressive, but I want it to be loud enough that sometimes if you have your volume consistent throughout the film, my goal is that when it goes to in-car, it's going to be a little uncomfortable sometimes, but that's because it is. If you're driving that car without ear protection, without a helmet, like it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. So these drivers have, their earplugs in and their helmet and the radio, so they're a little better. But I've talked to the drivers when they drive the car, and they've said, no, I can hear that through everything, and it's loud. So I wanted it to be real in that respect. In terms of the musical cues that happen throughout, that's sort of to add a little bit of that drama that you feel when you're there, but you don't feel when you're on your couch, right? So like that pit stop sequence where it's all the first person view of the mechanic, which I love. because it's
Oh
just
my gosh, you're
uncut,
talking about
unedited.
the slicks or the roads, like
Yep. That was cool. And that's cool because it's just like, and again, rarely do you get like one uncut scene that actually works without having to cut it, because you lose, it's just the drama isn't always there, right? So that worked. And then you tied in with the team radio and the music. And I built that scene is so complex. Like I built a custom score like for that scene, timed out to everything that happened. And I wanted basically to recreate the feeling of being there. Because if you just take the audio out of it when you're sitting on your couch, you don't really feel it, even though if you were there in person, you would, right? So I think what music does to me is, or musical, little ambient stuff in the background, it helps recreate the feeling of actually being there at the race and knowing what it feels like and what the team has been through, what this is like strategy-wise, the stress that happens for a team. Whereas on the couch, you're just showing up and you don't have the benefit of any of that foreknowledge, and you haven't been with this team for several months. So the music, I think, helps get you to that state that you'd naturally be in as a spectator or a team member at that race.
Is there anything else that you feel like is important for people to know about this movie before they get a chance to see it coming up soon?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm just looking forward to it. This is, my first feature-length film, so I'm enjoying the ride. I'm incredibly excited about it. The fact that it's received so much positive attention, and people really seem to like it. And I just honestly, first of all, I'm really excited to go see it myself in a theater on the big screen, especially with those in-car sequences. But I really just want to share my passion for the sport, to be honest. I want to share the way I see the sport with people. And I want to do it in my unique kind of filmmaking style. So I'm just happy that it's out there. I'm happy that it's receiving attention, and I'm love to hear positive feedback, and just would really love people to see it. That's simple as that.
So people can see it from February 11th to 17th. There will be an advanced preview in Daytona, Florida. And then on February 25th, there will be multiple places in the world release in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. And after that, on April 4th, it'll be available streaming on VOD on most platforms. So everybody, this movie is a masterclass in showing diversity in documentary filmmaking. This guy just told me that this is his first feature film, and I don't believe him. So I will stand by this probably for the entire year as one of the most exciting experiences you could have in a theater. Please go support it if you get the chance. Thank you so much, Mr. Bonvento, for coming out today and talking to me. And I just, go see it. Sorry. Anyways, like a tail end of